Okay. So I just wanted to present some of the challenges that farmers are going through, because I think the buyers need to understand that, advocates need to understand that, change agents need to understand that. You know, there are challenges to farm gate, more than just the bad condition the soil is going to be in when they come out of corn and soybeans. It's a major problem, it's a major shift. I used to do a presentation called Water as a Crop. DuPont trademarked the name Water as a Crop, told me I can't do that anymore. So I don't talk about water as a crop anymore. But you know, what if we thought about water as a crop? We can store 64,000 gallons in our soil. All right, next slide, please. 2030 projections, these are drought areas. Oh, by the way, California, you're not looking very good. Florida is gonna be underwater, but I can tell you Florida is tough environment to grow anything in. In the Midwest, we have it so good, we don't even know it. Last week I was up at Great Falls, Montana. They get 12 inches of rain a year. They grow lentils and peas and chickpeas, and they grow a lot of stuff on 12 inches of water. We get 40. So we're in an area that gets cool weather compared to Florida and Southern California. We get rain. Water is going to be the issue worldwide. I would argue it is already. Next slide, please. So what about rainfall? This happens to be Fairfield, Iowa in 2024. So what happened here? Well, you went from January, mid-Feb, didn't get any rain, snow, you didn't get anything here. You know, well, you almost die from a drought, and then you get a frog strangler, rain. You get 3-4 inches in a couple days. And at the end of the year, your average, looks like your average rainfall is about 40 inches. Next slide. So what about the heat? Well, we got more of it, more than the 10-year average. What we see in most counties is we see lower rainfall average, higher temps, average. So we have more growing degree units. Every year, this 10-year average line moves up higher. Next slide, please. These are Fairfield, this is Fairfield, Iowa as well. This is 10 years of rainfall and heat. What happens to rainfall and heat? They don't track together. And so as a farmer, you've got to manage that. You have to manage the difference in rainfall and the difference in heat. Fairfield, Iowa is one of the 10-year charts I've done that did not have the heat spiking like other counties. I've got counties where the heat spikes, you know, get way distant from the moisture line. But we see pretty good uniformity here. Go ahead. So where's the buffer for all that? It's the soil. It's the soil that can harvest the rain. It's the soil that can produce those vegetables. So what is soil? We quickly forget. 45%, it's minerals. We hope it's 5% organic matter. That's 50%. The other 50% is 25% water and 25% air. If you don't have air pockets in your soil, air cannot go out so water can go in. You can't force water to go down where there are no air pockets. The first thing that has to happen for water to infiltrate is air must come out of the ground. We've got to get the tilth and the texture back in our soils. We've got to get a soil protein called glomalin, which comes from microbes, and every nutrient in your plants comes through a microbe before it goes to that plant. So, next slide, please. We need to take a three-dimensional look at our soils. We need to look at how we test soils. We got to look at how fertilizer companies make recommendations on our soils. Next slide. So this was the soil test I got back from the guys in Ledger, Montana. And up there, they test soils down to 36 inches. From 24 to 36 inches, they've got 24 pounds of fertilizer per acre. It got down there with 12 inches of annual rainfall. 0 to 24 inches, they have 69 pounds of fertilizer per acre. The 0 to 6, they only have 18. The 0 to 6 is the least amount of fertilizer. Where do you take the soil sample? 0 to 6. Where's your fertilizer? Down to 24. So you got plants bringing that up? You need to mine your own fields for nutrients. you bought and paid for the fertilizer, then you put the fertilizer in nobody's bank. So what happens when you grow kale, broccoli, cabbage, the rest of the brassicas? You put down a root that big around. It'll go as much as 36 inches deep. It'll grab those nutrients, it'll bring them up, then it'll leave them in the 0 to 6 area. So I would argue that a profitable crop year could be just planting vegetables that will bring nutrients up for next year's crop. Because I don't have to buy that fertilizer. And the other thing we need to do is, we need to degrade the revenue quicker, the residue quicker, because we're gonna recycle those nutrients. So like the potash that's in corn stalks, if I can put microbes on those, dissolve them and have them ready for the next season, I don't have to buy that fertilizer, I'm ahead of the game. So the way we manage nutrients is pretty barbaric. Next slide, please. So this I sent to Waters Lab, and I do this a lot. I take a soil sample and I take a plant sample at the same time. Why? Because the soil sample says I'm low on what? Potash. But when I look at the plant, I got plenty of potash. So am I low on potash because it went into the plant? Was it really a healthy plant that took the potash? Therefore I'm short of potash, or I'm seemingly short of potash? Or what about all these other things that look high? Zinc, I'm high on zinc in the soil, but over here on zinc I'm short in the plant. So why is that? They say I should spread 100 pounds of boron. I'm gonna spread 100 pounds of boron on 43,560 square feet. Now if I look at cubic feet, I've got 4 million pounds of soil. So I'm gonna put 100 pounds of boron in 4 million pounds of soil, and that's somehow gonna save my crop. Well, microbes are gonna go get that, plants aren't gonna get it. But you need healthy plant roots in your soil, and you need healthy microbes coming from those. Next slide, please. So Justus von Liebig, back in the 1800s, was the one that invented the law of minimums, or what's called the barrel stave theory. And all fertilizer industry operates on the barrel stave theory. And that is to say that whatever the lowest element is, that's going to be the maximum amount you can produce of any crop. Well, it's simply not true. Nitrogen comes and goes. It goes into the water, goes into the air. Phosphorus comes from rocks. What we're realizing as we do soil testing around the country, all of our soils is going up in phosphorus. Why? Because rocks continue to dissolve. And a guy from the University of Wisconsin stood up in one of my meetings and said, "Where did you go to school? You're completely wrong about that. If you find a rock on your farm in the fence row and it's been there for a long time, turn it over. Is it flat on the bottom? Absolutely. Where'd it go? It dissolved." And so phosphorus goes up all the time. And we're putting on a huge amount of phosphorus that we don't need. And farmers that are using RTK and putting strip till in, they're using half as much phosphorus and getting higher corn yields than they got at the full rate when they put it in the street. But we're managing phosphorus completely wrong. Nitrogen's a whole nother subject. Go ahead. So the other thing I like to do is monitor water, so I know where my nutrients are going in the soil. This is a water monitor I have in Florida. The red soil temperatures, this is 6 inches, this is 12 inches. Why 6 and 12? I wanna see if that water's pushing through 12. Because if it is, it's probably taking my nutrients deeper in the soil. And if I'm gonna put my nutrients deeper in the soil, I can't grow corn and beans, because corn and beans are gonna take up all their nutrients within 8 inches of where the seed's planted. And so we're never gonna get down to where the nutrients are in the soil. Next slide, please. So, this is a soil health test. So Rick Haney had this test out for about 10 years, and nobody would see any validity to it. They said, well, you're only measuring microbial activity for 24 hours. He dries the soil out to 0.0 moisture, then rehydrates it, and then measures how much CO2 is given off in 24 hours. And that's how he calculates that score. And all the peers said, it can't be that simple. It just can't be. Well, it turns out that now A&L Labs, Midwest Labs, labs all across the country are doing the Haney soil test, soil health. In Florida, I can tell a guy how many oranges he's gonna pick based on the soil health test. If I look at NP and K, I have no idea. Because the correlation of NP and K in the soil is not correlated to soil health. Next slide. So this is one that the soil health is up at 22.7 score. So this is in Illinois. But I think these soil health tests are gonna help guide us in the future of how we look at land. We're gonna have to look at how our rain comes, when our rain comes, when our heat comes. Richard Hoffman at Cornell says, with climate change, we don't need to be studying climate change in agriculture. Climate change is important to study, but not us. In agriculture, what we need to be studying is what grows best in a changed climate. So now that Iowa is getting the weather we're getting, which is plenty of water and plenty of heat, but pretty much more consistency than other parts of the world, we're in a really good area to produce produce. The produce market is expanding in what it wants in the future. Profitability is in produce production if you're efficient and you do most things right. Corn is crashing the soil, it's crashing the bank account, and it's got farmers leverage to the hilt. And I think it's just a time in agriculture that we can look at things differently and start doing some things differently. So that's my message for you here today. And with that, I'd just like to open it up to discussion about your vision of what is needed. What do you feel we need to do from here?